Chamo agora a Esther Klassen, uma holandesa que conheci neste projeto Building Bridges, uma grande senhora que trabalhou sempre perto de quem mais precisa, trabalhou com prostitutas, já tem mais de 100 programas de justiça restaurativa mediados, facilitados. Foi a nossa formadora dos nossos facilitadores em Portugal e também dos espanhóis, e que nos vem falar do passado da Prison Fellowship e também do que foi a entrada do programa Sycamores Project, de origem americana, na Europa, na Comissão Europeia. Bem-vinda, Esther, é um enorme privilégio ter-te aqui. Muito obrigado.
Good afternoon. I'm very privileged and honored and happy to be here at the first Iberian Restorative Justice Conference. My name is Esther Klassen. I'm coordinator of the Restorative Justice programs in Prison Fellowship, the Netherlands. In July 2007, I took part in a training program for the International Diploma of Restorative Justice in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. I had been working on the Sycamore Tree project in the Netherlands for 1.5 years, only working in 2 prisons and about to start the first SDP program in a youth facility. It was encouraging to meet people from all over the world working with the same restorative justice program as I did. We all learned how to contextualize and make restorative justice relevant in our own situation. One person who always comes to my mind when I think of this time in Canada and this education program is Deo Gracias Kashagaza, Executive Director of Prison Fellowship Rwanda and committee member of Rwanda National Unity and Reconciliation Commission. He was called by God to a ministry of reconciliation in his home country, Rwanda, after the genocide, being victimized himself severely. A most humble, kind, and passionate man, bringing together victims and offenders of Hutu and Tutsi side to seek reconciliation and reparation of harm. And in order to reach this, he offered the Umuvumu Tree Project, the same sycamore tree project as I used to reach out to young offenders in Dutch prisons. Wow! We also had assignments to fulfill, and together with colleagues from England, South Africa, Estonia, and other countries, we worked on a restoration in the jungle. Elephant stole the crown of the Lion King, and Winnie the Pooh had to act as a mediator. She managed to reach a solution between both parties, and apparently it was a lot of fun to watch. And finally, we all made it, also with more serious stuff, to the end. Why do I tell this? Well, in the first place, I ran into these pictures when I was preparing this speech. But I'd like to emphasize that restorative justice is worldwide. It is an amazing thought and encouraging as well. There is no place where it doesn't fit. Restorative initiatives and programs need to be approached with cultural sensitivity. See and listen to what is needed and appropriate in specific circumstances, with specific groups of people. Contextualize and stick to the principles. And the third, restorative justice is positive, not to say fun. It's about exploring possibilities to find out which way to walk for all parties, using creativity, telling stories, listening, understanding, empathy, mediation, and celebrating together. So what is Sycamore Tree Project and what is Prison Fellowship? Prison Fellowship International was born out of the experience of Charles Colson, former aide to President Nixon. he was convicted for a Watergate-related offense, and Klassen served 7 months in prison. During that time, he saw and experienced the difference faith in Jesus makes in people's lives. He became convicted that the real solution to crime is found through spiritual renewal. When Klassen walked into freedom, he had a new mission in life: to reach out to men and women behind bars and give them the opportunity to turn their lives around through Christ. In 1979, he founded Prison Fellowship International, extending the mission and work beyond the United States and following God's call to proclaim the gospel worldwide and alleviate the suffering of prisoners and their families. Prison Fellowship is the largest, most extensive association of national Christian ministries working within the criminal justice field. We engage 1,000 full-time staff and board members and train, equip, and mobilize 45,000 volunteers in over 120 countries. Each of our trans-denominational national ministries is grounded in indigenous leadership and local funding. This grassroots presence enables us to minister to prisoners and their families in culturally relevant ways. The heart of our ministries is our volunteers, who dedicate and give so generously and powerfully of their time. In 1996, the Prison Fellowship International launched the Center for Justice and Reconciliation to serve as its knowledge center on justice and reconciliation. The center very quickly began to help Prison Fellowship affiliates applying restorative justice principles, policies, and programs in prisons and the criminal justice system. The vision is restorative justice as the normal way of responding to crime. One of the programs developed by Prison Fellowship International and the Center for Justice and Reconciliation is the Sycamore Tree Project, STP. It was launched in 1996 with pilots in the US, England and Wales, and New Zealand. Sycamore Tree Project is an in-prison restorative justice program. It brings together groups of unrelated victims and offenders. Prisoners can learn to understand the impact of crime on victims and take appropriate responsibility for their actions and responses. Victims, on the other hand, will have the opportunity to share their story about the impact of crime and express their sufferings, and thus experience relief and emotional restoration. Prisoners also share their story and circumstances of their lives and how they entered crime. What is a sycamore tree? The name of the program comes from this tree, a sycamore tree, that is named in the biblical story of a corrupt tax collector, Zacchaeus, who climbed in this tree to see Jesus passing by. Jesus wanted to meet with Zacchaeus, although the crowd protested against their meeting. As a result of the encounter between Zacchaeus and Jesus, Zacchaeus wanted to repay his victims and repair the harm that he caused. This story is used in the original STP program. In each session of the program, a part of this story is read or played and made applicable to the participants' lives. The victims and offenders who meet in these sessions are not the direct victims of the prisoners. And offenders of different crimes can join the group program, as well as victims from different crimes. Some countries try to compose groups around the same sort of crime. It's just different in different countries. In the Netherlands, we have very mixed groups, although we also organize separate programs for extra care units, where many sex offenders and infanticides are placed. Both victims and offenders participants receive proper preparation in order to feel prepared to participate. As well as to offender participants as to victim participants, we offer an intake and we talk about expectations, feelings, how is the current situation, how have you been working on restoration, and we also take a risk assessment for the participants. On this picture you see one of our preparatory sessions with victims before they participate in a program. An SDP program consists of 5 to 8 weekly sessions and is run by facilitators and co-facilitators of a prison fellowship national ministry. Mainly well-trained and equipped volunteers. The team uses session guides to deliver the program, and all participants use workbooks with questionnaires and activities. And each program ends with a public celebration event. The subjects that are covered in SDP are an introduction to justice and restorative justice, crime, responsibility, confession, storytelling, forgiveness, restitution, reconciliation, and the final celebration. Each participant makes a symbolic act of restitution to present to the group in the last session. This is to really make a step toward another party, like victim or family, or it's meant to show in general what is learned from the SDP and how he or she will work on restoration in the future. Sycamore Tree Project is run in 30 to 35 countries all over the world, reaching 3,500 prisoners each year. I'd like to show you a short film where we meet some of the victims who participate in Sycamore Tree Project.
My story starts where my dad took my mum's life when I was about 13. And how that happened was we went out for a picnic the day before. I woke up the next morning to my brother shaking me saying, "Pete, you got to get out of bed. Dad's just gone out of the house. Mum's dead. We've got to get out."
It was just a normal day. He went off to work and he didn't come home in the afternoon. And I went down to the car yard to find out what had happened. He said he had to see someone and he went off and I didn't see him again after that.
It came up on the TV. Mum was in the kitchen and we were all lying on the floor, you know, just as kids do, legs up and just lying there, just watching the news. And it came up, the remains of murdered car salesman Brian Andrews have been found.
It flashed up on the news that a skeleton had been found in the bush and they put a picture of Dad.
I was working in a bank at the time and a man came in and held a gun to my head and threatened my life and demanded money.
It's then when we got to the police station that they informed us that Michael had been murdered along with 2 of his students, and that's when our world fell apart.
I didn't quite know what to expect, and I went into the Sycamore program with a lot of trepidation.
I didn't really see myself doing it. You know, why would you want to talk to someone who had intently taken someone else's life?
Were these people doing it for the right reasons? Were they doing it just to fill in time while they're in prison?
Going into jail, the actual prisons themselves, the prisoners, what they thought of us and how they would receive us in prison.
And you begin to see these people as people. You begin to hear their stories. You begin to hear what they've been through, how they've ended up where they are. You begin to see them as people rather than just as offenders. And the more you hear their stories, the more you can resonate with where they're at and how they're progressing.
There was a part in the program called the ripple effect, and we did a practical illustration where we had a little pond of water, and we dropped a stone in it, and just like on a lake, the ripple effect of the water going out as ripples until it finally either stops or gets to the very edge.
So then later on we broke up and talked to the offenders sort of one-on-one, and we sat there and we talked about the ripple effect, you know, as a victim to offender.
Who were the people that are immediately affected and those outside of that? And then the bigger picture. And then, you know, and then I guess looking at in terms of our years, like the first year who was affected and the second year. And for myself, how have I been affected throughout those years and how has it changed me?
And we realised that it's not just us that's affected, it's, you know, you're the extended family, and then it's your friends, and then it's the work colleagues and the community. And
To face the offenders in prison, I found was really enlightening. They weren't horrible people. They were young men who had had terrible childhoods.
And you really do see a change in them. And some of them, like in prison, you're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to talk about these things. I have seen inmates cry. I have seen them talk about these things.
It was about giving victims a voice. For me, it was about providing them with the opportunity to be heard and validated and be part of the sentencing process, or be part of post-sentencing, to be actively involved in it. In the criminal justice system today, victims don't have that opportunity. We're left out of it, yet we're the ones that are affected by it.
you know, 8 weeks, you've built friendships with these people that would normally be considered your enemy.
Without a program like SDP, fellas most probably wouldn't hear a story like mine.
And I guess that consensus that restorative justice is soft on crime, I would challenge that view and would encourage people in whatever way they can to be involved in restorative justice, be involved in the Sycamore Tree program and see it for what it is. And they'll realise in that involvement that's actually much harder.
If we can just save one person from just reoffending, the money that you save is enormous, and I dare anyone to put a price on that, because that, at the end of the day, saves families the trauma that they all go through. And I've seen so much trauma, both personally and within organisations relating to crime victims. And it's, if we can just save one, just one, it's worth it.
In 2005, I was asked by Prison Fellowship the Netherlands to set up and run a program in prisons called STP. And we adjusted to the Dutch prison situation. We called it SOS. When I translate it, it sounds quite weird, but in Dutch it works. It means speaking about victims, guilt, society, responsibility and restoration. In Holland, we have a lot of S as SOS. In English, it sounds weird. So I started in 2005, and what came out of that? The SOS course, that's actually the Sycamore Tree project as it is designed. We take 8 sessions to work through the materials with the group. The second one is SOS Meeting. That is a short form for people that are detained in the house of detention or short-term prisoners. And it contains just 3 sessions because most of the people will be out of prison after those 3 sessions again. So it's short, but it's something. And then even shorter is the SOS single group sessions. And we present this to even more short-term prisoners who are only in for a week or 2 or 3, and they can just join the single sessions, and we capture all the subjects of STP. Then we made SOS individual. So we left the idea of a group for certain people, and we have volunteer and one prisoner working through the materials, and when possible, just bringing in a victim. And this is especially for people who are not able to function in a group, or who are in a prison where we do not run SOS, or for other reasons. An SOS individual actually has proven to be very powerful. Then we have SOS Youth, which we do not run anymore because the youth facilities where we ran the program, they were so excited about SOS Youth that they gave it a place in their standard method. So this is how you lose programs due to the success of it. So what we are developing is SOS in forensic psychiatric facilities and the SOS follow-up. We found out that after participating in an SOS program, people just want to go on, want to learn more, want to figure out what it means for their lives. So we are developing SOS follow-up. And since last year, we also run SOS outside of prison. Just to give you an idea of one of the European countries, how it has been developed over the past 10 years. We always want to know, does it work and how does it work? And I just give you an idea of some scientific evaluation. Wait, I first tell you a story. It's like 2 or 3 months ago, a young postman came to our office to deliver a parcel. So my colleague opened the door and the postman said, "Are you working with prisoners or something here?" "Yes, we are Prison Fellowship the Netherlands." And "Oh," he said, "do you run a course named SOS?" And my colleague was like, "Yes." He said, "In 2007, I was in a youth prison and I took part in the SOS Youth program. And we had been talking about responsibility and crime and restoration. And then in that one session, a victim came in and she shared her story about being robbed and the effect it had on her life. And in that session, I decided my life should be changed for the good. And I did. So I'm out of prison, I'm out of the criminal records even. I have a job and I'm doing fine. So for us it was very encouraging to hear a testimony like this 9 years after the program took place, because often we just don't know how people continue after SOS. So I thought this is encouraging for everyone who works with restorative justice. Then back to the research and scientific evaluation. The SOS program in England and Wales have been evaluated by the Sheffield University. Western Australia has done research. Building Bridges has undergone a scientific evaluation. And recently in the Netherlands, the Research and Documentation Center of the Justice Department has done an evaluation on SOS. And I just combine some results, and it says, for prisoners, it gives a better understanding of the impact of crime, a better understanding of thoughts and emotions that lead towards crime. There is a growth of eternal commitment to change and some initial steps towards rehabilitation. This is very general, and it differs per evaluation, but this is kind of the idea what prisoners get out of Sycamore Tree Project. Victims also experience good things through the project, mainly lessening of fear. So fear is reduced after meeting prisoners and sharing your story. They feel stronger and aided in healing and less depressive. And they feel heard and acknowledged. I often hear victims say, "This is the only place where I am heard, where people listen to my story." I've never thought that would be in prison. So you could say, for all people counts, it's a life-changing experience. And in many countries where these programs are run, there is also a growing help towards families of prisoners, children of prisoners, as well as in Portugal right now. So I want to show you another short film, and that is, you just see some victim participants and offender participants from SOS in the Netherlands. And they talk about what SOS means to them.
Over slachtoffers, schuld en samenleving. Wat heeft deze cursus voor daders en voor slachtoffers betekend?
In het begin dacht ik, wat voor cursus zou dat zijn? Ik deed in het begin heel makkelijk daarover, maar hoe meer sessies je gaat, hoe meer je gaat voelen wat anderen hebben gedaan. Dus dat is een hele goede cursus, vind ik. Dus als je alles zeker bent met je leven en het veranderen, dan is het goed dat je zo'n cursus volgt. Het is, laat je zien wat je verricht aan andere mensen. Dat breng je ook bij het bewustzijn van, je hebt ook andere dingen gedaan, maar dat komt ook bij de familie terecht. Ja.
Ik vond het heel interessant om een SOS-cursus mee te doen. Ja, normaal kom je natuurlijk niet in de gevangenis, dus ik vond het heel leuk om te zien wat voor soort mensen er zitten. Dat het eigenlijk normale mensen zijn die ook hun gevoelens hebben. En ik vond het echt belangrijk om daar een bijdrage aan te leveren. Dat ze toch gaan inzien dat het leven ook anders kan zijn. En dat ze gaan inzien dat er vergeving voor ze is. En ook hoe er herstel plaats kan vinden.
Als je aan deze cursus begint, werk hard om, ik zeg het als het ware, je puin uit het verleden op te ruimen. Je grijpt het met 2 handen aan om iets van je leven te maken. Wandel niet in de cirkel rond, want het heeft geen zin. Ik ben er zelf doorheen gegaan en ik ben er constant nog mee bezig, maar het heeft me nu gebracht waar ik nu ben. En ik wil je alleen maar daarin bemoedigen, ik wil jullie bemoedigen. Van, weet je, pak het op, wees een overwinnaar hierin. En je zal zien dat je daarmee heel veel problemen en datgene wat is geweest, dat je dat op kan ruimen. En dat je opnieuw kan beginnen.
Dat heeft mij wel gemaakt dat ik hier nu weer zit. Het heeft voor mij heel veel voldoening. Heel veel een stukje rust gegeven. Gewoon van, ik weet het nog steeds niet goed wat die mensen doen. Er zijn gewoon slachtoffers en daders. En je kan er ook tussenin zitten. Het is ook wat jullie geven. Maar een dader kiest ervoor. En altijd wel met een achtergrond van, ik doe het omdat ik geen geld heb en ik doe het omdat... Maar ik doe mijn werk om mijn centen te verdienen. En ik kies er niet voor om overvallen te worden. En ik kies er niet voor om bedreigd te worden. En ik kies er al helemaal niet voor om een slapeloze nacht te hebben.
Ik heb mijn verhaal mogen doen en dat vind ik al belangrijk. Ik heb daar wat contacten gevonden. Er is een dader die is aan een brief bezig, aan mij gericht. Er is een dader die wil me spreken als hij vrijkomt. Ik heb zelf een gesprek gehad van 1 op 1 met de moordenaar. Dus dat is ook wel ervaring. En wij worden daar uitgenodigd. En dat vind ik ook wel heel wat. Er is belangstelling voor ons, om ons verhaal te doen.
So we make the bridge to building bridges. Prison Fellowship in Europe had the wish to open up more opportunities to offering restorative justice programs by the European affiliates. The STP program had so much potential and can bring change in so many lives affected by crime, either victims or offenders. One of the ways to help European national ministries to set up these programs and help each other to develop was requesting support from the European Union. Thus, a European Union project was proposed and granted. The name of the project that was going to develop Sycamore Tree and the victim support that came along with it was Building Bridges. Building Bridges aimed at exploring possibilities to transfer STP to those European countries without such programs, and further adaptation of the programs in multicultural settings inside and outside prisons. Building Bridges has implemented 14 pilot programs in 7 countries in different settings inside and outside prisons. And facilitators were trained in the methodology. Building Bridges has undergone a comprehensive evaluation in order to be able to contribute to an evidence base for enabling and hindering factors of victim support in Europe. And Professor Jerry Johnstone will tell you more about this research tomorrow. Portugal and Spain, as well as the Netherlands, were partners in Building Bridges, together with 4 other prison fellowship ministries and 2 scientific partners. Some of the partners had a lot of STP experience and some had none at all. So as a Building Bridges consortium, we focused on setting up and running Building Bridges programs for victims and offenders in all our countries, writing a guidebook in order to make Building Bridges material available to any organization or person in Europe who wants to set up similar programs, building networks with partners in the criminal justice field, victim support organizations, politicians, etc., and developing the support that victims need when participating in a Building Bridges program. This is just a brief overview of what Building Bridges is. And I'd like to share a story of a young lady who participated in Building Bridges in the Netherlands. A young lady, Lydia, 26, heard about the Building Bridges program that was going to run in the high security prison of Rotterdam, the Netherlands. She decided it might be an opportunity to find out if she could tackle the fear that kept her tight since the 2 robberies that she experienced some years ago. Lydia got in touch with Prison Fellowship the Netherlands, who was going to facilitate the program, and a meeting with the coordinator took place. That's me. Lydia was eager to meet with offenders, to listen to their stories, but even more to share her story of fear and PTSD after being victimized twice. During the sessions, Lydia took the time to listen to the participants, but also share her opinions on the subjects of Building Bridges. When it was her turn to share her story in the group, she was really nervous. And she warned the group that she would probably laugh while talking, and that it didn't mean that it was not serious. She made a deep impression on all the participants when she told how she was being robbed twice. And everybody was really touched by her story of trying to cope with the effects of crime. Participating in Building Bridges had a great result for Lydia. Her fear was reduced so much that she was able to travel by train again on her own. As a part of the PTSD that hindered her for years, traveling by train had been difficult, but she came by train to one of the last sessions of the Building Bridges program. So one could ask, is it restorative justice? STP, SOS, Building Bridges. We can discuss that in length. I would like to say with Dan Van Ness of the Center of reconciliation and justice, we make our programs as restorative as they can be. One of the main principles of restorative justice is dialogue, and dialogue is what happens in these programs. People participate voluntarily. They decide to be open to meeting another party, even if it's not the one related to their crime. People experience a certain level of healing, restoration, reparation, and people can experience crossing the bridge to the other party. Those are all elements that take place in restorative justice. So there are distinct levels of restoration, and dependent on the situation and circumstances of the participant, SOS, STP, building bridges will open up new opportunities. Self-recovery. One of the offender participants said, I kind of feel that they don't hate me. So he was experiencing some recovery on the personal level. Restoration towards the family. One of the offenders said, through the ripple effect, I learned how much my actions affect my family. I'm going to say sorry. Also, relationships between victims and their own family sometimes need restoration. Restoration towards the other party of crime, the offender or the victim. One of the offender participants said, by hearing the story of the victims, I want to be open for meeting with my victim too, so that she can express her anger and her questions towards me. Now I know that is important. And restoration towards community or society. Remember the story of the young postman that I just shared. So when we see restorative justice in a triangle perspective, and it's just another triangle than the ombudsman just shared, we see that the three parties are all involved: victim, offender, and community. The victim in empowering, feeling compensation, acknowledgement, recovery. The offender in understanding, expressing guilt and shame, being accountable, re-socialize. And the community in the peacemaking role, reducing fear in community and contribution to safety. So, the future of building bridges. What can we say? What can we dream? More victim involvement and victim support. As a prison fellowship organization, it's a challenge to give offender participants and victim participants the same amount of support in the way they need it. And we would like to offer more victims the opportunity to experience healing through these programs. More bridges. As prison fellowships, we can create bridges between society and offenders through our volunteers. We build bridges between offenders and their families and their children. Bridges between society and the family and the children of prisoners. And we can even facilitate the bridge between victim and offender. The unrelated victim and offender in building bridges, or even mediation with the related victim and offender. So at the moment, STP is being reshaped. And funny enough, in building bridges, we try to have more victims involved in the programs. But the new STP will turn to the Dutch situation of having 1 or 2 victims involved instead of a group. Focus on sharing, and they will make a Christian and a secular version. And the vision is 100,000 dialogues a year. And then there is the challenge of funding in the future. How will these programs be funded? I realized there is one very important part that I kind of skipped Here it is. I should go back to that before I go on. Go back to the SOS sheet. There we are. Yep. This is strange that I skipped the most important part of the speech, because this was the title even of my speech. As you see that in Holland we made quite some variations of SOS in order to connect as good as possible with different offenders in different settings, bringing them in a small or a more extensive way in contact with restorative justice principles. So what is the difference between the original STP method besides the variations that I just mentioned? One difference is, instead of having a mixed group of victims and offenders, we bring in 1 or 2 victims just once in a course. This has a very practical reason. It has appeared not to be easy to find victims who want to participate. This way of connecting people around crime is rather new, and parties are kept separate as much as possible by agencies or just by themselves. However, one victim coming once in the program has proved to be very powerful, as well as for the group of offenders as for the victim itself. The victim participates in session 4, and this session is generally felt the turning point of the program. Victims testify of healing experienced through sharing their stories, even to the extent that they don't feel comfortable in their victim role anymore. So that is the first change, and the second change is we removed the story of Zacchaeus. Why? We discovered that we were putting much energy and effort in debating with either prisoners, prison staff, or the Justice Department about the Christian content of SOS. We explained that it is a faith-based program, but not faith-promoting. At Prison Fellowship the Netherlands, we decided to confront ourselves with the questions: what is the goal of SOS? Who is the target group? And how do we reach them best? We have gone through a process of trying to make SOS accessible without raising barriers for whoever is or could be involved. We want to be in line with the people that we reach out to. This can mean let go of certain content, but stick to the principles. We make use of other stories, film clips, and even our own Prison Fellowship film with restorative stories of victims and offenders that we have got to know over the years. But even more important, it is the stories that the participants themselves share. So in Europe, Prison Fellowship England and Wales has also changed their program into a one-time victim involvement. And I helped Prison Fellowship Norway to set up SOS in their secular context. And they applied the STP and restorative justice principles in their own SOS program, being run on the Bastoy prison island. So these changes in bringing in one victim once or twice and removing the story of Zacchaeus are the main changes that Prison Fellowship made in STP. Through Building Bridges in the Netherlands, we have both programs now. We have the program where a group of victims and a group of offenders are together in one program. And we have the SOS program where the group exists of offenders and a victim comes in once. So there was one victim who participated in Building Bridges. And at that time, last year, she said, "I am happy that I have the chance to really get to know these guys. I can't think of coming in once and sharing my story with unknown prisoners. So building bridges was the exact right thing for her. 1 year later, last May, she said, I am happy that I will only share my story in one session. She was going to share her story in a SOS course. And not to need invest in intensive relationships with inmates. So SOS Building Bridges was good for last year. And the regular SOS is good for now. So it sees that victims can benefit from different ways of interacting with prisoners. We can just read together one of the acts of restitution that a victim wrote for the final celebration of the Building Bridges program. She made a kind of poem, and again, it was written in Dutch, so it may sound a bit different in English. I want to live without fear. I want to travel without goal. I want to walk without hassle. I want to think without fight. I want to bike without looking over my shoulder. I want to do things without fatigue. I want to live. Live without thinking about what perhaps, maybe, someday might happen. A life with handling my PTSD. You want to go without asking. You want to err without walls. You want to sport without time. You want to know what is ahead. You want to eat without choices. You want to live with your girl. You want to live. Live without walls. Live in freedom. We want to go without stopping. We want to sail without harbor. We want love without end. We want friendship without buying. We want to work with pleasure. We want a family we can trust. We want to construct something, be of value. We want to live. Live with perspective, live with optimism. In this course, we all have value and we have worked hard on and for ourselves. I'm happy that I took part in this program and for sure will look back to it often. I'm still fighting my fear, but I know I will win in the end. So finally, last Christmas I was in Israel. Whenever I was asked about my job, and I told about it, people laughed and said that reconciliation was nonsense. Victims and offenders would remain enemies forever. Now, I won't discuss the conflict situation of Israel with you. I just want to share that I visited a peacemaker. This man was called to work on peace and harmony in whatever conflict situation. Maybe small, within the family, bigger, between victims and offenders of crime, or on a village level, and even bigger between people groups. And while we were talking inside the building, there was shooting outside. The conflict became very near. For me, for the first time, of being right into the battle area. We couldn't leave the building, so we continued to talk about peace, about storytelling, about bringing people together, about dialogue, about listening, about seeing each other as persons instead of enemies. And when we finally left, with a handkerchief and a raw onion under my nose against the tear gas, I realized that in whatever situation, whatever place, just be a peacemaker. Thank you.